Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review for July 13, 2025. Today we're experimenting a little bit. We decided to just take a couple of topics and talk between the two of us, Hovik and myself, and see what we get. Sort of like an all kitchen sink episode, but with just a couple of topics.
And of course, this is not an experiment. You should definitely do this. You should help us out because Groong is the only English language independent podcast covering Armenia and the region on a regular basis. We have no handlers, we have no sponsors, and no script. So if you value that kind of freedom, help us amplify our message. Go to podcasts.groong.org/donate and become either a one-time sponsor or a sustaining member. You can do that through Patreon or buy me a coffee, and all of the links are on that website. And hey, if your wallet is as empty as the Armenian opposition's game plan, you can still help. Like, share, and drop a comment. It's free and it confuses the algorithm in helpful ways, in all the right ways. Thanks for being part of this.
Okay, let's go on with the show then.
So the main topic of our conversation is going to be the Pashinyan and Aliyev meeting in Abu Dhabi. And actually, this is a very encompassing topic, but let's begin. So we know that ever since May, Pashinyan started this assault against the Armenian church, and it quickly escalated into arrests of opposition leaders and church leaders. We have two archbishops. You know, Armenia is a small nation, so it doesn't have that many archbishops. But we have two archbishops who are in pre-trial detention right now for 2 months. So after all of that hoopla, Pashinyan traveled to Dubai for a quiet meeting with Ilham Aliyev. And this meeting was kept secret until last moment. And after details, most of them had already been leaked to the press. And it came on the heels of Pashinyan's visit to Istanbul last month to meet with Erdogan, who a week ago praised Armenia's growing flexibility on the so-called Zangezur corridor, their pan-Turanic wet dream. No public deal has emerged so far, but there has been speculation in Azeri media that Pashinyan has basically capitulated on this issue as well. And we should also note that 4 months ago, Pashinyan rushed to announce that we already have the text of the draft peace treaty already, finalized. Everyone congratulated and patted Pashinyan on the back. But that still remains unsigned because Aliyev has preconditions. Surprise, surprise. And Armenia must meet all of those preconditions before the treaty, the so-called treaty, will be signed. And those preconditions keep changing. So Aliyev keeps changing the goalposts. So anyway, it was a 5-hour meeting with Aliyev, Pashinyan, and a group of senior lieutenants, I would say, from Armenia and Azerbaijan. Asbed, do you have any thoughts on what happened?
Well, like you said, Hovik, 5 hours of a meeting, and it doesn't look like a whole lot of agreements were reached. Otherwise, we would have known about it. On the Armenian side, we saw the pictures actually of Pashinyan and Aliyev sitting, and then on their sides, on the Armenian side, there was Ararat Mirzoyan, the foreign minister, Armen Grigoryan, who is the national security chair, Ruben Rupinyan, who is Mr. Normalization with Turkey, and Deputy Prime Minister Maher Grigoryan, who is I think he's there to take care of the infrastructural ends of the meeting. I'm not sure why Ruben Rupinyan was there, whether he was taking stock of Armenia's interests or Turkey's interests in this meeting.
Yeah, so Maher Grigoryan, I just want to add, he's the main person in charge of demarcation and delimitation,
Yeah, he
which
chairs the
is,
border commission on the
yeah.
Armenian side. Yeah, on the Azerbaijani side, similarly, we had the foreign minister, Ceyhun Bayramov. Hikmet Hacıyev was there. He is the foreign policy advisor to Aliyev. There was this Shahin Mustafayev, I believe he is the head of a Aliyev think tank, and the special envoy for the so-called Zangezur corridor which is Elchin Amirbegov. I'm not sure if his name is Amirbegov or
Yeah.
Amirbegov. What is it?
It's spelled different ways, so both of them are, correct, I think. So one of the news items that was leaked, even before this meeting, was that Armenia might agree to um, the so-called Zangezur corridor under an outsourcing deal with a Western US-based company. And what this basically means, we don't know. But essentially, Aliyev has multiple times had said that he doesn't want to see any Armenian when he sits in Baku in a car and drives through Armenia to Nakhichevan.
So, Hovik, I think that the Armenian Ministry of Foreign Affairs was the one that announced that they are, I think they started floating the balloon that they are not against any kind of a third party that, like a company that would be managing this and the so-called corridor.
Yeah, and he had the caveat that as long as their principles are maintained, and I don't know how the principle of sovereignty can be maintained if decisions are going to be made by a foreign company.
A foreign company that is under a lot more influence by people who have money, like Azerbaijan and Turkey and the United States than Armenia in making
Yeah,
its decisions. So, in reality, I think that this is a face-saving um, game of terminology, basically conceding the sovereign rights over Sunik. Um, because as Pashinyan told his civil contract party right before going to Istanbul, it is imperative for him to get any kind of a document signed by Aliyev where the title includes the word peace so that he can get reelected in 2026. So I believe that he is ready to make any kind of a concession in order to accommodate Aliyev's demands for free passage to Nakhichevan. But
yeah.
let me ask a question. Uh, some people, not us, have been calling these discussions between Aliyev and Pashinyan negotiations. If this was a negotiation, there would be some modicum of reciprocity. Is there any kind of reciprocity? Can Armenians, for example, um, pass through Nakhichevan controlled by this third company to Iran without ever seeing an Azeri?
Or to Yerevan for that matter, because it would probably be shorter to get on a train from Mehri to through Nakhichevan to Yerevan than through the Sunik. So obviously the answer to that is no, and we know that this is a session of, yet another session of capitulative, concessions.
Have you heard that this road is going to have some kind of a special status? Because any kind of a status is actually an encroachment on Armenia's sovereignty.
I mean, that's the point. Essentially, if this is if the sovereignty of the East-West connection through Armenia is reduced, then so obviously the north-south connection would have to be somehow impeded. So let's say it's a very simple visualize a intersection, right? It's one vehicles going north and vehicle south and vehicles going east-west. Who stops for whom? If there is a accident on this road and Azerbaijanis don't want to see any Armenians, who investigates if there's a death, if there's a crime happening on this road, whose police are involved? These are all questions that don't have answers to and could spell the potential for very dangerous future interventions. And precisely, I think
Um,
that's the reason why this is so, ambiguously left to.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's more than just a traffic control issue. It's not just east-west versus north-south. You can just put like there was a listener who commented on one of our videos saying, "Why don't they put a tunnel there and let's be done with this?" Well, if the matter was layers, third dimension, or something like that, there are lots of interchanges that people can go east-west and north-south without ever having an accident. But the reality is it's the sovereignty and the control and the management that is the most important thing. Because if let's say Azerbaijan has full rights to go across without ever being inspected or anything, and they start running drugs, they start drug trafficking, they start nuclear
Or
trafficking or whatever.
weapons. Yeah.
Who is responsible for this? Because they're going to look and say, oh, well, on paper, this is sovereign Armenian territory. And Armenia would say, well, we have no right to look at their stuff. And they will say, well, it's Armenian territory, and these issues are your issues. Um, Regardless of all of these things, for me, the primary issue is that it's Armenian territory and customs control must be exercised. And Armenia has in the past said they are willing to offer to Azerbaijan the same access through the land that Iran is offering to them, for example. And they are willing to accept the Iranian terms. Why aren't they willing to accept the same Armenian terms for passage through these things? The reality is that it's not just passage. They really want um, Armenian land. Ultimately, we are not seeing any signatures on these agreements because Aliyev is not incentivized to sign anything. All of the analysts we've talked to have told us that Aliyev is still in a post-war euphoric maximalist mood. If he thinks that in the next couple of years there will be an opportunity for him to take all of Sunik and eventually all of Armenia, why would he sign anything right now? And I think this is the crux of the matter. What do you think?
So I think it can be done in steps. I think that Aliyev will probably sign something closer to 2026. It'll just be a symbolic
To make sure
document.
that Pashinyan can get reelected?
Yes, of course, because no other leader, I will repeat, no other leader will be as traitorous to Armenia, I believe, as has Pashinyan in all of Armenian history. He'll remain the most vile traitor that Armenia has ever had. But um, Erdogan and Aliyev should count their lucky stars, and I believe that they will do something. And I can even visualize how Pashinyan will go from door to door, shaking this piece of paper like Chamberlain did, saying, "See what I brought you! I brought you peace." But I think that the corridor actually can be done piecemeal. I mean, maybe this year Azerbaijan does not have the strength to take it by force, or does not have maybe the geopolitical
So when you're
situation
saying
does not.
it can be done by piecemeal, you mean they can implement it piece by force over time.
So let's say right now it's like degraded status, and then they have a false flag attack sometimes, sometime in the future. And because of this confusing geopolitical status, they claim to, have the need to use military force, and then it becomes a outright occupation in the future. I mean, Aliyev and Erdogan, don't aren't that desperate. They can wait 10, 15, 20 years as long as they are able to move the needle.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what Pashinyan is doing. And we have for the last 2 weeks, we've talked about these weird um, Russian-Azerbaijani tension that is occurring. And I believe that, the theory is that this is all related to this, play essentially by Aliyev and Erdogan to bring in U.S. sponsored sort of a U.S. company
Yeah,
to oversee this
some Western
corridor.
company because there have been some European companies at play also. Reportedly, I don't
Because,
know any of
yeah,
them.
yeah, for our listeners, after the 2020 war, there was this November 9/10 ceasefire deal, right? And in that ceasefire deal, there was point number nine, right, which says that Russian border troops should guard this communication. Pashinyan went through one extreme after another. He even gave up on Armenians of Artsakh. He said that Artsakh is part of Azerbaijan. And one of the reasons he said that is because he didn't want to compromise on point number nine. He said, at least we will have a sovereign Armenia, even if we agree to give up Artsakh. Essentially, that was his selling point for why he wanted to give up Artsakh. And now, even that point is, seen as a concession. And even worse, it's basically a coup from pivoting from Russian-controlled corridor, which was stipulated under point number nine, to U.S. controlled. And just to be clear, we want full sovereignty of Armenia over our Armenian land, and I consider Artsakh Armenian land as well. But Yeah, I think this was a fast one that Aliyev, Erdogan, and Pashinyan now are trying to pull on Russia, and we're seeing Russia react right now in different ways in Ukraine, in Russia, in terms of the Azerbaijani mafia and so forth.
Yeah, I'll get there in just a second. But the press releases from the July 10 meeting from Dubai basically said that the sides agreed to continue bilateral efforts, continue with confidence building measures, and continue border commission work. And that's the Meher Grigoryan part with Mustafayev. Um, so confidence building measures. I'm not sure entirely what they are alluding to because like I said, Pashinyan has offered that they can have transit through Armenia on the same terms that they have agreed to have with Iran. So why wouldn't Azerbaijan suddenly start driving its trucks through Mehri, undergo customs, and see if this is really terrible or not so terrible, and just get to Nakhichevan and see if that's a life that they can live with? Why isn't that happening? And the second question I have for you, it seems a little disjoint, but I think they come around to the same thing. What was Pashinyan doing in Istanbul about 2 weeks ago? And did he think that Erdogan was going to somehow influence Aliyev to start doing those confidence building measures? Does Erdogan have the kind of leverage Pashinyan thinks that he has over Aliyev to make him sign some kind of an agreement?
Look, on the confidence building measures, I basically think that this is all a ploy. Aliyev will claim that we need security guarantees for our drivers, we need security guarantees for anyone using this corridor.
Which is all bullshit.
Yeah,
When have
it's
Armenians killed
bullshit.
truck drivers, Azeri
I
truck
mean,
drivers through Armenia?
like
That
we
never
have we have
happens.
we have we have the murderer trying to be a victim here. I mean, we have someone who ran out 150,000 Armenians from Artsakh,
And
completely depopulated, and he's so
and the
so
West
I just
pretending
don't.
that this is a real issue. I just want to highlight that this is such hypocrisy that's going on. Hovik, the State Department said they had nothing to share about the American proposal for a third party to manage this corridor. A lot of newspapers said that the State Department had no information about it, which is, I think, incorrect. They said they have no information to share about this. Why do you think they're saying nothing about this?
This is purely probably Erdogan play, but of course Erdogan represents NATO, so as long as he gets it done. And what I think will happen, I've seen some speculation that the company involved will probably be a U.S. company that's based in somewhere in the Middle East, that has staff in the Middle East who are potentially of Turkish or Muslim background, because Aliyev has repeatedly said, and it's very important to pay attention to what Aliyev says, because everything he has said so far, unfortunately, has come true. He says that, if there's going to be anyone inspecting us on that road, it should be our people. So it should be people that we trust. That means that he wants to see either Turks, either Azeris, or Muslims, maybe even Pakistanis, who knows? But uh, I don't see any reason for Aliyev to compromise right now on that matter, given the strategic, I guess, given the balance of forces,
Of course,
unless Russia or Iran somehow intervene and try to change the balance.
well, that was actually where I was going to go with it because there have been some Western companies that have been talked about. One of them, apparently, an American company that is based in the UAE, but it's using troops of some international flavor, including Turkish troops, by the way. So whether Armenia, well, under Pashinyan, anything is possible. He doesn't give a damn about Armenia, it seems. But the question I have is, how is this all going to work out for Iran to have a NATO-controlled corridor to the north of it? And how is that going to work out for Russia, where the expectation is that the point 9 of November is still a valid point to argue about and to implement. And here we are, Armenia is moving away from that agreement and implementing a geopolitically, geostrategically orthogonal solution to Russia's needs.
Yeah, I mean the
They're not just
cards
going
that
to sit around. They're not going to sit around
well,
with this.
they're not going to sit around, but the cards that Russia has to play, obviously, if there were Armenians in Artsakh,
Mhm.
If there were Russian troops uh, still on that road, then they would have their cards to play. But
Even today, they would have cards to play, Hovik. They could say that the corridor conversation was the Lachin corridor versus this kind of a corridor so that there would be equal access across each other's territory. But as we discussed with Artur Mardirosyan last week, it's Pashinyan who has allowed all these completely irrelevant topics to be infused into the so-called negotiations and become agenda items. Anybody reasonable at the table would have said, we're not talking about this. We're talking about something else. We're not here to discuss all these new issues like change of constitution, Western Azerbaijan, blah, blah, blah. This is all bullshit stuff that we are suffering because Pashinyan is the one at the table with Aliyev.
in terms of real cards to play, hard card, not soft power, the only thing that we're seeing is the kinds of things that Russia is doing with Azerbaijani mafia in Russia. So I don't know, how far that can go, but that's what I'm trying to say. In terms of diplomacy, yes, diplomacy can be diplomacy, but diplomacy has to be backed by leverage that Russia has, and unfortunately, Russia has less and less leverage in terms of physical power in the region, thanks to the Pashinyan-Aliyev duo. And we're seeing Iranian commentators and analysts freak out. They're really worried about this play by Pashinyan and Aliyev. But we're also seeing that, for instance, last week, Pezeshkian went to occupied Stepanakert,
Mhm.
which the Turks call Khankendi, and it's a ghost town. It used to be purely Armenian, and they held this pageantry of conferences there, and Aliyev likes to hold conferences there whenever he can. And I don't know what the purpose of Pezeshkian's visit was, because the optics of that really looked very bad. If
Well,
Iran
he's
wanted to
gotten
send a message,
criticized at home for doing that.
well, yes, but he is a president of Iran, as
Mhm.
whatever that means. They say that Ayatollah Khamenei holds the real foreign policy, but we've also seen a lot of criticism uh, against Pezeshkian, because the reformists, they want to sort of improve relations with the West, and I don't know um, if Iran's red lines. So we keep asking this to our guests, but I don't know how red are Iran's red lines nowadays with Pezeshkian's visit to Stepanakert that
Yeah.
I saw, because that sends the wrong message. So if you want to send a message that Iran will not tolerate this corridor, then going and smiling and standing up when Aliyev comes into the room is not a good optics to and not a good way to send that message.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Iran's red lines are pretty close to where we are right now. Obviously, we're not that close to Russia's red lines. I mean, Russia does have some leverage. Armenia's, what, 60% of Armenia's economy still depends on Russia. So they have a say. They can always start flexing their apricot economy muscles if they wanted to affect Armenia
Yeah,
negatively.
you're assuming that the gang that manages Armenia is interested in economics and improving or keeping Armenian economy from collapsing that way.
Yeah. Also, remember, Hovik, that during the 12-day war, when Israel and the United States were waging war on Iran, Turkey and Azerbaijan had these, I think it was called the Kemal Atatürk military exercises in Nakhichevan. They were fully ready to capitalize on an opportunity to see if Iran got really weakened by the war, they would probably invade Sunik, possibly even invade into Iran and become NATO's arm to effect regime change. The fact that nothing happened after the 12-day war tells me that Iran is strong enough to defend its red lines. At least that's my impression at present. So,
Yeah, I mean, we can. It's sad that we have to put our hopes on foreign powers, but there are reports today that Israel is planning. I believe it was Axios that was reporting that Israel is planning to continue actually the fighting soon. So I don't believe that we're out of the water yet, but in reality, the main guarantor of Armenia's sovereignty should be Armenia. Of course, we should have friends, but it
should
seems
be.
like all of these discussions are ending up pinning hopes on Russia and Iran on doing something, when even Armenia itself is acting against the interests of Russia and Iran. So,
Okay, so Hovik, you mentioned that Armenia's guarantor of security should be Armenia. Let's talk a little bit what the opposition has been doing or what has been experiencing. The arrests of Samvel Karapetyan a week ago and Archbishops Ajabahian and Galstanian were not the end of that story, as you know. Dozens more have gotten arrested over the past week to 2.5 weeks. You and I always talk, and sometimes we're talking with our friend Pietro, and our topics start mixing politics and movies. And I couldn't help but recall this baptism assassination montage towards the end of the Godfather movie, where Michael Corleone has just taken over the family and he's attending the baptism of his nephew. And the priest calls on him to renounce Satan in order to become his nephew's godfather. And he's saying, I do, I do, and I do. And every time he's saying, I do, his people are assassinating rival family chiefs in cold blood around town. Similarly, we have Samvel Karapetyan and other Karapetyan family members getting uh, arrested, archbishops getting arrested. Pashinyan is in Istanbul sucking up to the enemy, to Erdogan, or he's back in Armenia and going around visiting children's centers. And in the meantime, the electric company is getting confiscated. Or, I'm not joking. I really, while I was reading the news, as I was posting the news on Groong's Facebook group, I these visions were going right through my mind that, oh my God, one, two, three, four, five people got arrested, and he is at a children's center. What was it called? I think it was called the SOS Center, and he was doing some completely irrelevant thing, or he's going to the funeral of an Armenian artist. And meanwhile, behind his back, all these people are getting arrested. All these terrible things are happening. The parents of soldiers who died in the war are protesting. None of that is really in the coverage except um, in non-governmental sources. So, can you tell us a little bit about all these arrests happening? Who's getting arrested? What kind of relevance it has to the elections in 2026?
look, things are moving so fast that it's actually we were trying to compile a list of all the political prisoners in Armenia so far, and it's definitely more than 2 dozen. But it's difficult, because every time we update the list, there's new people arrested. Let's begin with Samvel Karapetyan, who is a dual national, Armenia and Russia. He is actually we talked a lot about him, but in terms of the his philanthropic activities, I mean, he has been a major supporter of Armenia all these 30 years. He built, he rebuilt the hospital in Stepanakert, the one that was bombed by Azerbaijan. He invested hundreds of millions of dollars to do that. Every year when there's these, when we have the Thanksgiving telethon for Armenia Fund, we like to remember Kirkoryan as a benefactor, but he is no less important in terms of donations, and he has always been very generous towards Armenians. He has,
He's the Eastern side oligarch who comes through and gives at those telethons.
yeah, yeah, and it's amazing that Pashinyan can muster enough power to arrest and keep someone like that in jail. And I believe that the repercussions of that we will still see in the future. But basically, the guy said that we will, he urged the politicians to defend the church, and if they don't defend the church, then he will do it in his own way. And that was enough for him to get arrested. And after his arrest, everyone else started being arrested, including Archbishop Bagrat Galstanyan, Archbishop Mikhail Ajapahian. It got so bad that even members of parliament are now being stripped of their parliamentary immunity. So we already talked about Seyran Ohanyan and Artvik Minasyan in their corruption cases. But besides this, opposition MP Artur Sarkisyan was stripped of parliamentary immunity.
Mhm.
And the following day, the judge rubber stamped his arrest um, for 2 months for the pretrial detention, and this is all related to Bagrat Sirpazan or Bagrat Galastanian. So we should tell you what like Bagrat Galastanian is being accused of, I guess, because he's been we talked about it actually. So go to our previous podcast and just listen. It basically a piece of printed paper that says that we're gonna some kind of a plan for a revolution, and the piece of paper is has a date stamp of 2024. So it's something that apparently was planned in 2000 last year, and apparently the Armenian government had no idea that this was going on. They showed pictures of legal weapons, legal hunting rifles, and so forth, and including in the pictures of the licenses that people have for those hunting weapons as evidence of weapons that they were being planned to be used in a coup. It's clear that these are like basically fabricated charges. Even the audio that was leaked by Armenian state authorities, the investigative committee essentially, there's allegations that it was pieced together from various different sources and it was edited to be out of context. So, and potentially even just augmented by AI. So we really don't know if any of these allegations are true, but the state media is, acting in full force, trying to paint, trying to drag these people through the mud
Mm.
and drag the church through the mud. In fact, Pashinyan, using Facebook every day to continue his assaults on the church. In fact, the other day he threatened. He said, "I will liberate the Armenian church." Satan, will liberate the Armenian church, and he will lead that liberation. So every day now, people are just waking up and saying, "Did he attack the church today or not?" And that's the mental state of Armenians nowadays.
Hovik, Pashinyan's government would collapse if Facebook blocked Armenia. Okay, it's that simple. Uh, to put such a dependence on a social media platform is just a national security issue, as far as I'm concerned. But what about this other fellow, Andranik Chamichyan? What do you know about him?
Yeah, the Strikeball terrorist. So this case had me research what Strikeball is. I don't know if you've ever played Strikeball or if you
I
know, but
I
I
don't know what
hadn't.
that is.
I knew what paintball was, and I guess when you play paintball, these are like these pellets that blow up, and visible paint is
Yeah, splash you.
gets on you, is splashed. So
You have to swear.
soft,
You have to wear
yeah,
special clothing to play
yeah,
paintball, for
yeah.
example.
So strike ball is more like they have grains in it that it's an honor system. So if you get hit, you have to sort of admit that you were hit. But basically, this guy's a strike ball enthusiast, and he holds strike ball competitions. So he has a lot of equipment and paraphernalia related to strike ball, including like grenades and things like that. So his grandma apparently got really upset at him because he didn't clean his room or he didn't have his equipment in clean order, and she put it outside the door or outside the building or whatever, because she called him. She told him to come and pick it up, and the neighbors, when she did that, the neighbors noticed it. They called the authorities. Something looked like a grenade, and you would think that that would be the end of it, right? The authorities would come, they would see this is like toy equipment, and they would say, okay, just don't, be careful, don't do this again. Except they arrested him for terrorism, for plotting to do terrorism.
How
And what
old
they
is
did
this
is,
guy?
18 years old, he is a member of the ARF. And one of the things that they confiscated from his home is a picture, is a T-shirt or jacket maybe that says Mahkam Azatütün. In Armenian, it says basically in English that would be give me liberty or death. And I guess they really got scared of that statement, and they're going to use that as evidence. That's a famous statement from Garigin Nujde, and that's a famous statement that all ARF members swear by. So that's really interesting that that was used. I mean, in the by the investigators as evidence.
It's like
And
a
what
party
happened
motto.
was, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's the motto of the one of the mottos of the ARF. I forget if it's the official one, but
People wear T-shirts saying Mahkam Azadutun. It's just
I mean, this it's surreal, and
Yeah.
it's
Well, I think I
it's
saw pictures
beyond the
in Armen
circus.
Press or something like that. Those guys absolutely love to.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on.
Just to be complete,
Uh-huh.
they searched. They went through the contact list of Andranik Chamichyan. They found like 40 people that he had conversed with. They searched the house of 40 of his friends, and just one of those friends, or I'm not sure, one of those contacts, I'm not even sure if it's friend, had they found some kind of a suspicious weapon or a grenade or something. The mental gymnastics that being performed by the investigative committee is saying that these guys, this is an entire network plotting to do government overthrow because one of the members or one of the contacts had, an illicit weapon or something. Even that we don't know. It's alleged illicit weapon. So it's clear that this is being used to persecute the ARF, and the ARF is
Well,
one
they
of the
raided ARF Agum's clubs and arrested a number of
yeah.
people, a good number of people.
Even and even Gegham Manukyan, who is a
Hmm.
member of parliament, his son was also a suspect. His son was arrested as well, and they used the pretense of because his son, I believe, may have been in contact with Andranik Chamichyan. So it's clever because they use this pretense because his son is a contact of Andranik Chamichyan, so we must search the son's house. Of course, the son lives with Gegham Manukyan. So Gegham Manukyan is a member of parliament. He has parliamentary immunity. Anything that he has, his property, is immune from searches unless you go through a specific procedure. So what they did is they used this pretense that Gegham Manukyan's son was also affiliated in this network to search Gegham Manukyan's house. And there were images like the entire house being turned upside down. They weren't able to find anything, but just another way that this government is trying to sort of push all the envelope in all directions.
So a couple of people were fired, faculty members were fired from Yerevan State University. What for?
The dean of the theology faculty at Yerevan State University, Bishop Vartan Navasaryan, was dismissed from his position. He has been the dean of that faculty of theology for 20 years, and he was dismissed shortly after he essentially attended a rally in support of Samvel Karapetyan. And the reasoning provided by the university was that his contract is expired and they're not going to renew it. But obviously, the contract is for 5 years, and it has been renewed at least four times over the last 20 years. And all of a sudden, after this bishop attended a rally in support of Samvel Karapetyan, suddenly his contract is no longer renewable. Another evidence of the government using full force of the administrative resources
Hmm.
to punish anyone who speaks against them or who has different views than they.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember right now the name, but there was another faculty member or staff member who got released from his position for pro-opposition
Yeah.
views and stuff. One of your friends, Karen Igityan, was also actually not arrested, I think, right? He was not allowed into the country. What was the story with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so this is a fear that many patriotic Armenians have when they come and arrive at the customs terminal in Yerevan at the airport, because more and more people are being turned away and declared persona non grata. So Karen Igityan is a researcher and he teaches at the Russian Armenian University. He is well known in Armenian circles. He has been living in Armenia for the past 20 years. He was born in Armenia, but he was a Russian citizen. And just last week, when he arrived in Armenia from a conference in Russia, he was basically turned away, and he said that and he was no valid reason was given. I mean, this is a person who has a job in Armenia. This is a person who has real estate and a house in Armenia. He lives in Armenia for all intents and purposes.
You know what's funny? Back in 2024, I think when Armenian customs agents took over Zvartnots airport from the Russians, we were not thinking that it's going to be a politically motivated takeover, so that the Armenian government basically prevents anybody who has pro-opposition or anti-government views. They can't enter the country. I was thinking
Yeah.
more one of an issue of sovereignty, as was declared, that Armenia had fully capable customs border uh, abilities at that point, and the Russians were not necessary at Zvartnots. I thought, that can make sense, but it's clearly being used to prevent people who do not care for this government, to prevent them from
Yeah.
entering the country, including a lot of diasporans.
And diasporan Armenians, but also the news is replete with also Russian politicians being
Hmm.
declared persona non grata.
Hmm.
So Konstantin Zatulin, one of the friends of Armenia in Russia's parliament, many who have expressed criticism of the Pashinyan government are just simply being sort of crossed off. And yeah, Karan Igityan just basically he's now stuck in Pizhigorsk in Russia, and it's unclear. I talked to him last night, and it's
He,
unclear on what's going to happen with him.
he
So
teaches in
he
Armenia, so it's not clear how he's going
so
to be
he has
teaching
a
his
job.
class.
Well, he won't be.
No.
He won't be able to do that. When I asked him to come on Groong to give us an interview, obviously one of the challenges is he knows Armenian but not English, so we would have to translate it. But he basically said he doesn't want to hoard publicity because, I mean, the news is full of people being treated much worse than him. So,
Mm.
he asked that we don't present him as too much of a victim, considering everything else that's going on in the country. And um, unfortunately, I think he's right.
Yeah. All right, Hovik, I guess we're just going to keep watching what's going on. And next week, we'll be back with one of our experts and analysts and discuss what's going on. Maybe we can revisit some of these things as they mature. Take care, everyone. And don't forget to visit podcasts.groong.org/donate and either become a sustaining member or buy us a coffee. And we always appreciate you listening to us, because if you can't do it, you can always share, like, and comment on our shows. And that helps us a lot already.
And make sure to subscribe to us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Asbed Bedrossian, still in Los Angeles.
And I'm Hovik Manucharyan, finally home in Armenia.
Talk to you
Yerevan.
soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.